Hello to all my rock buddies around the world. This is your Rock Papa. I hope you guys are having a great spring and are doing very well indeed. I'd like to invite you to come along with me while we discover the entire geologic history of North America, starting at about 1 billion years ago and coming on up pretty close to today. So this will be a two-part series, 2 videos, and today is the first one. Before we get into the geologic history of North America, I think I'd like to review a couple of things. First of all, geologic time, how it's apportioned out, and how to easily remember it. And then the second thing is to review the processes of plate tectonics that resulted in all of this tectonic activity in North America over the last 1 billion years. So that's what we're going to do with this video, and in the next video we will actually delve into that geologic history. So I hope you like this video. If you do, as usual, please subscribe, and many thanks to all my excellent subscribers. So here we go. Geologic time and the processes of plate tectonics. Long ago, before geologists knew about plate tectonics and continental drift, they classified time periods based on the fossil record. In other words, the fossils they found in each layer of sediments or rock, and how those fossils changed. Whenever there was a change in the fossil makeup, they made a new time period. That's a good thing, and that is the way that we got our divisions of geologic time, based on the fossil record, the changes in fossils in each layer. But we're going to find out, maybe not in this video, but in the next one, that each of those geologic time periods also corresponds to a major plate tectonic process that happened. So let's keep that in mind as we look at these geologic time periods. Here is the first of 3 screens that have all the geologic time periods from late Precambrian coming forward. You will readily observe that I have rounded off these dates associated with each time period to make them easier to memorize, because once you have them memorized, you can move about in your mind in them and understand geology much better. 2 things to know about these geologic time dates. First of all, they're not exact, and they won't match up exactly with other examples of the dates. And the second thing is that if you look at 10 different geologists or geology textbooks, you'll get 10 different series of dates for these. So nothing is exactly accurate, and that makes me feel good about rounding. In my memory process with these time periods, I start with the Ordovician period, because to me, Ordovician has 5 syllables, and the Ordovician period begins about 500 million years ago. That helps me. Maybe it'll help you. The next thing that helps me is that all the periods last about 50 million years based on my rounding. And so I can start at Ordovician and go back to Precambrian or forward to an earlier period just by adding 50 million years to each one. You'll see this 50 million year thing breaks down when we go to the Mississippian and Pennsylvanian periods, but those are the only ones that are significantly different. A final thing here is that you see the tertiary period. Well, the tertiary period is broken down into all kinds of smaller periods that I don't really think about and are not important from my mental framework. I visualize the tertiary period as 3 subperiods, because those correspond to the major tectonic events that occurred during those times. Okay, so guys, if you're interested, you can go back and review these time periods and their dates associated with them, and memorize them if you can. If you don't want to fool with that, you can always come back to that part of this video later. 3 to 5 years later. Never. Just kidding. Now let's talk about the major plate tectonic activities that cause all of these fantastic geologic changes. 2 plate tectonic processes account for most of the activity that we see out there. Those are rifting and subduction. Let's get into them. Let's focus first on rifting. Rifting creates oceans and expands oceans. I would say this to myself about 25 times because it's super important. Here is the supercontinent Pangaea. All of Earth's land masses are concentrated in this one giant supercontinent. Having a huge supercontinent laying on top of the mantle is like putting a top on a pot of boiling water. It boils faster and hotter. The mantle erupts like 1,000,000 trillion blowtorches, rifting the supercontinent apart. Let's watch as supercontinent Pangaea rifts apart, creating and expanding oceans. This stage of the world should look very familiar because it's the one that we have right now. You guys probably know that the Earth is made up of these giant crustal plates. There's usually a land part, land crust, and an ocean part, ocean crust, on each of the plates. And wherever you have rifting, with an ocean being created and getting bigger, on the other side of that plate, you usually have subduction. So let's get into subduction. Big thing to remember here is that subduction creates and enlarges continents. Let's look at how that happens. In this picture, the little yellow hand with the finger is pointing to a hunk of ocean crust. It's gray in the picture that's subducting, going underneath some land crust of a continent, which is on the right. Why does the ocean crust always go under the land crust? Because the ocean crust is heavy and the land crust is light and buoyant. The subducting ocean crust goes down into the mantle where it's melted, creating tremendous pressure. Magma under pressure rises up into the land to form explosive stratovolcanoes that add to the size of the continent. But that's not all that happens, because out in the ocean, quite often an ocean crust will break and one piece of ocean crust will subduct beneath another, creating an island arc, an arc of volcanic islands, a volcanic island chain. This volcanic island chain approaches the mainland and eventually is welded onto it, further increasing the size of the continent. Rock buds, during these subduction events, you might get more than one island arc forming. The island arc may form before the ocean crust dives under the continent. It's a mix and match thing, but eventually, usually the last part is when another giant continent finally crashes into our existing continent. And if that goes on to its ultimate end, a new supercontinent is created. And so, when the ocean crust is subducted underneath a continent and mountains form, that's an orogeny. Later on, an island arc might form and crash into the continent. That's another orogeny. And finally, a big continent will crash into an existing continent. That too is called an orogeny. Orogeny means mountain building event, and it usually takes several of these orogenies to create a supercontinent. So later on in the next video, when I talk about an orogeny, that's a subduction-oriented mountain-building event that adds to the bulk of a continent, and several of these orogenies all put together one after another create a supercontinent. I hope that makes sense. Beautiful sunshine today. So here are the takeaways from today's video. Rifting creates and enlarges oceans. Subduction creates and enlarges continents. Rifting breaks apart supercontinents. Subduction creates supercontinents. In the next video, we will look at all of the tectonic events that went into shaping North America, both on the East Coast and the West Coast. So stay tuned for that. And thank you so much for watching this video. Thank you for subscribing if you like it. I really appreciate all my excellent subscribers. And this is your Rock Papa saying, happy rock hunting. Papa out.